Welcome to East Gippsland Shire Council's meeting of Tuesday the 14th of November 2023. East Gippsland Shire Council live streams, records and publishes its meetings via webcasting. These recordings are available for viewing by the public by following the link on Council's website. During the meeting, any members of the public who are addressing the Council will have their image recorded and comments also. No other person has the right to record Council meetings unless approval has been granted by the Chair. In line with the Local Government Act 2020, councillors are able to attend council meetings electronically or in person, and the meeting will be open to the public via live streaming. If technical difficulties are experienced with the live streaming during the meeting, we will adjourn until the issue is resolved. If technical issues cannot be resolved, the meeting may be postponed to a later time or date. Just like to start too by recognising the traditional owners on the lands in which we meet tonight. And the East Gippsland Shire recognises the Gunai, Kurnai, Monero and Bidwell people as traditional owners of the lands that encompass East Gippsland Shire and their enduring relationship with country. The traditional owners have cared and nurtured East Gippsland for tens of thousands of years and continue to do so. Council value their living culture and practices and their right to self-determination. Council pays respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people living in East Gippsland, their elders, past, present and emerging. A member in attendance can only be recorded as present at a council meeting when the member can confirm that they meet all of the following criteria: that they can hear proceedings and can be heard by other members in attendance, and they can see other members in attendance and can be seen by other members. I will now confirm with each councillor attending online in turn that they can see, hear and be heard by each other, and note assurance from each councillor that the location they are participating from is secure to ensure that confidential deliberations remain confidential. Councillor Buckley, can you see and hear us?
Yes, Mayor, I can.
Can you confirm that the location you are participating from is secure to ensure confidential items are dealt with in a confidential manner?
Yes, Mayor, it is.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillor White, can you see and hear us?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Can you confirm the location you are participating from is secure to ensure confidential items are dealt with in a confidential manner?
Yes, it is.
Thank you very much. If a councillor participating electronically experiences technical difficulties during the meeting, we may adjourn briefly to enable the councillor to rejoin the meeting. Should the councillor be unable to reconnect within 5 minutes, the meeting shall resume in the councillor's absence. Agenda item number 1.2 is apologies, and I believe there are no apologies for tonight's meeting.
That's correct, Mayor.
Thank you. Agenda item 1.3 is declarations of conflict of interest. Councillors, are there any declarations of conflict of interest for tonight's meeting? No conflicts of interest noted. Confirmation of the previous minutes, agenda item 1.4. Councillors, we now move to item 1.4. Do I have a mover to confirm the minutes of council meeting held on Tuesday the 17th of October 2023 and the statutory meeting held on Thursday the 26th of October 2023 are an accurate record of that meeting? Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Allen, thank you. Is the motion opposed? Would anybody like to speak for or against that motion? I now put the motion to the vote. All those for? All those against? The motion is carried. Agenda item number 1.5, our next meeting. The next council meeting is scheduled to be held on Tuesday the 28th of November 2023 at the Corporate Centre, 273 Main Street, Bairnsdale, commencing at 6 o'clock. CEO, are there any requests for leaves of absence?
None have been received, Mayor.
Thank you. We'll now move to open forum, agenda item 1.7, and the first item is 1.7.1, which is petitions. CEO, are there any petitions for this evening's meeting?
There are none, Mayor.
There are none, thank you. Agenda item 1.7.2, questions of council. Mr CEO, are there any questions of council?
There are. We have one question from Mr. Morris Borgelt, who is here in the chamber tonight.
Thank you. And I'll just remind everybody present that members of the public addressing council are reminded to extend due courtesy in respect to the council, its staff, and the processes under which we operate. And she'll take direction from the chair, that's me, whenever asked to do so. There will be no discussion or debate with the attendee for public questions or submissions. However, councillors may ask questions of clarification of the attendee. I, as chair, reserve the right to cease a question or submission at any point if deemed inappropriate or inconsistent with council's governance rules or mutual respect charter. I will now ask Mr. Morris Borgelt to please come and ask his question. Welcome, Morris.
Thank you. It is rumoured that council is not doing an expression of interest for the December 2024 Carnival in Lakes Entrance. Instead, it is giving the present operator an extra year. Is this true and why?
General Manager for Place and Community, would you like to respond to Mr. Borgelt's question, please?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. So currently the arrangements for Carnival and Lakes Entrance beyond December 2024 are under consideration.
So, no, yes or no?
As I say, they're currently under consideration, and as a result, it's not appropriate to provide any further information. When we're in a position to do so, we will do so.
Thank you, Mr. McConnell. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification of the speaker tonight? I see none. Thank you for your question, sir.
Thank you.
Agenda item 1.7.3, public submissions. Mr. CEO, are there any public submissions?
Through you, Mayor, yes, thank you. There are a number of people wishing to speak. Some of those are to the specific agenda items, but there is one from Ms. Nola Kelly, who would like to speak in the first instance, and the other, we have 4 speakers for items that are on the agenda.
Okay.
But Nola Kelly in the first instance, Mayor.
Understood. I would now then ask Ms. Nola Kelly to come forward and make their submission to council. Thank you.
Good evening.
Welcome, Nola.
The East Gippsland Shire Council apparently have made the decision not to declare a climate emergency. My understanding is that this was due to concern about raising the anxiety levels among the community. However, it still remains of vital importance that there are some means of dynamic communication to both inform and educate the local community about the issues involved in global warming. One such pressing and important issue is the need for Council to have a current and active heatwave plan. The Bureau of Meteorology have declared an El Nino weather event of severe and unprecedented heat for the summer of 23-24, and it is looking like 2023 will be declared the hottest year on record. Last year, 60,000 people in Europe died from the impacts of extreme heat. Extreme heat is often connected to other health impacts, such as those from smoke and bushfires, exposing communities to compounding disasters. These events are likely to increase in frequency very quickly over the coming years as the impacts of climate change rise. Modelling shows that towns like Orbost will have a 50% increase in the number of days the temperature is above 35 degrees by 2030, which is just 6 years away. Heat is not equitable. Renters and those who can't afford air conditioning or even to run air conditioning are the most severely hit. Small children, the elderly and those with disabilities or complex medical conditions are vulnerable to effects of extreme heat and heat-related illness. Even some medications, such as antidepressants, can have a compounding effect. Gippsland has a high percentage of people at risk due to its higher than the Victorian average rates of obesity, chronic disease and high-risk health behaviours. Furthermore, the number of people aged over 60 is projected to be 30% of the population by 2026. The current East Gippsland Shire heatwave plan was developed in 2014 with an upgrade made in 2015. It states that they do not offer any cool zones or hot day out centres. These centres are common in many parts of the world. Rural areas such as East Gippsland often do not have venues such as large shopping centres, cinema complexes or other places people can easily or cheaply access in order to stay cool. The elderly are unlikely to want to spend the day at the pool. A comprehensive heatwave plan would have the benefits of reducing the demand on emergency services, reducing heat-related deaths, reducing isolation, anxiety and other mental health impacts that occur as a result of extreme heat. Ideally, a council heatwave plan would include the provision of access to appropriate cool spaces for vulnerable people. Hot day out centres could be developed utilising both council and community facilities, including clubs, places of worship or senior services organisations. They could also provide information and education about climate change impacts, as well as access to health and mental health supports. It is difficult to address problems and issues that are not acknowledged. By not declaring a climate emergency, the East Gippsland Shire become even more responsible for the community as they become complicit in maintaining a community that is both ill-informed and underprepared to meet climate change challenges. The potential possibility for people in the East Gippsland community to be adversely affected by a climate-related impact at some stage is very high. By seeking to protect the community from the current reality and not ensuring that people are adequately prepared to deal with climate impacts means the risk is very high that those very people will be even more traumatised when something happens. The Council must develop a suitable means of risk management by doing whatever possible to ensure the citizens of East Gippsland are fully informed. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Kelly. We'll now move on to agenda item number 1.8, which is items for tabling, and I believe there are no items.
You can ask questions of clarification.
If you would like to ask a question of clarification of the speaker, that is fine.
Is it only the speaker I can ask the question of clarification?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Okay, I'm not sure if it's exactly for the speaker. I just wanted to know how often we are required to update emergency management plans. But maybe you take that on notice and I'll ask it at a future date. Okay.
We can do that.
A good question. Thank you, Councillor Van Diggle. We'll now move to agenda item 2, which is notices of motion. As identified in the agenda, Councillor Mendy-Yuri has a notice of motion at item 2.1 relating to climate change initiatives. Before Councillor Yuri presents her motion, I will now ask Mr Tony Peck to come forward and make his submission.
Thank you. Yes, look, I'm a little sad that I'm not here speaking to a motion for a declaration of a climate emergency, but that's where we're at. But I am pleased to be able to speak to this modest motion that outlines some actions aimed at raising awareness of climate change's impact on our region. I'm going to refer to Twiggy Forrest, or Andrew Twiggy Forrest, who is a miner, people would know about him, well-known mining magnate. And through his many mining ventures, he's emitted many millions of tonnes of CO2, and he is quite open that that's what's happened. And he is now advocating taking serious action, and I think that's an indication of how serious this issue is getting. At a recent speech, which is available on websites online, he detailed the impacts of even a small amount more warming. Many parts of the world are already experiencing increased deaths from heat. Similar topic to Nola. Forrest explained the concept of wet bulb temperature and the impact of a wet bulb temperature above 35 degrees on human bodies. And in fact, he uses 35 degrees, but a lot of the science suggests that even as much as 30 degrees is quite serious. Wet bulb is slightly different to normal temperature, but I won't go into that. So Forrest focused on the impact on the body as it loses the ability to thermoregulate, and this is quoting him. It's a bit gory. Your core temperature rises, and it rises really quick, he said. Your heart rate accelerates. 100% more blood starts sloshing through your system. You get a pounding headache, vomiting. This is really well documented in human science. Within minutes to hours, you start to reach a point where those wonderful complex blood proteins start to unravel. It's a chemical reaction. This is a lethal humidity death. Your blood thickens, you internally hemorrhage. Those structures inside your body are like chemical reactions. They're not coming back. They're like an egg. When it's cooked, it can't be uncooked. That's the end of the quote. It is clear that large parts of Australia will be adversely affected by the rising temperature. We need urgent planning and education in our communities to minimise the harm that can be caused. We still have locally the memories of the 2019-20 bushfires. We must do all we can to protect our beautiful region and all who live here. I ask all of you to support this motion. I also ask that all of you ensure you have the latest scientific information on global heating and that you aim to include the actions recommended in that advice in every decision you make. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Peck. Are there any questions of Mr. Peck, councillors? Councillor Buckley, you have a question of clarification for Mr. Peck.
Yes, I'd just like to know what Mr. Peck's qualifications are in regards to making his statements.
My background is a nurse. I was a nurse until I retired, and a nurse educator at the local TAFE for nearly 20 years. And since I retired, or before I retired and since then, I've been researching and finding out as much as I can about climate change, amongst other things. So, yeah.
Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Peck.
Thank you. Are there any further questions, councillors? Thank you, Councillor
Tony,
Reeves.
can I ask you a quick question? I'm just interested in Twiggy Forrest. One might suggest that his approach is a bit like drawbridge politics. You know, he's profited profligately from the behaviour of extractive industries, and now it's all very well and good with so much money in the bank to be able to have that high moral ground. Do you think he's really genuine in what he's saying, or is it okay when you're rich and wealthy and privileged and entitled to come from that position?
I have mixed feelings about Twiggy Forrest.
Yeah.
I think that I think nonetheless that his speech was excellent, and he has got a doctorate in marine science, which is what triggered his interest in climate change. And look, I think he sees the writings on the wall. I think that he sees that if he doesn't adapt, he's going to lose business, that the profits in future are going to be from green steel produced using renewable energy. He sees that, you know, that if he's going to make profits in the future, I think he's very focused on making a lot of money from it, and I don't think he's apologetic about that. I think he sees that as the future. But yeah, definitely, he's responsible for the emission of many millions of tonnes of CO2, and he's been part of the problem. But hopefully, I think he's the beginning of a wave of people in his position making that sort of change.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Thank you, Mr Peck. Are there any further questions, councillors? I see none, so we'll move on to now ask Angela Crunden to please come forward and make her submission. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you. I'm also speaking in relation to the notice of motion, and my presentation will be partly my own and partly from Antonio Guterres, the United Nations Secretary General. We and the rest of the world are experiencing a climate crisis that is only going to get worse unless governments at all levels adopt real and effective strategies to fix the problem. The International Panel on Climate Change estimates around 3.5 billion people live in, and this is inverted commas, contexts that are highly vulnerable, including exposure to acute food insecurity, floods, drought and storms. I'd like to share with you Antonio Guterres' comments in July of this year when scientists confirmed that July 2023 was the hottest month in human history. He says, "The era of global warming has ended. The era of global boiling has arrived. The air is unbreathable, the heat is unbearable, and the level of fossil fuel profits and climate inaction is unacceptable. July has already seen the hottest 3 weeks period ever recorded and the highest ever ocean temperatures. The consequences are clear and they are tragic. Children swept away by monsoon rains, families running from the flames, workers collapsing in scorching heat. Leaders must lead. No more hesitancy, no more excuses, no more waiting for others to move first. There is simply no more time for that." He added that this should not result in desperation, but action. It's time to convert the burning heat into burning ambition and speed up climate action. The future of our planet depends on it. So I'm figuring that if Antonio Guterres was here today, he would join us in supporting the notion of motion 2.1 at the very minimum. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Crunden. Councillors, are there any questions of the Speaker? I see none. Thank you. I'll now ask Robin Hermans to come forward and make her submission, please. Welcome, Robin.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'd just like to make a short statement, and it's a note of appreciation to Council regarding this notion of motion. Thank you, Council, for your concern around climate change and considering the best ways forward in shifting gears to a greater awareness and increasing rate of transition to a low-carbon economy in East Gippsland. The motion has my approval, and I would simply like to highlight that support for the science behind climate change by community leaders on Council is critical. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr Mayor. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I was just asking to turn the volume up. Some people were finding it a bit hard to hear, but I could hear you, as I think the councillors could. So thank you. Councillors, are there any questions of Robin? I see none. We have one more statement from Rosemary Gooch. If you could please come up and make your statement to Council, please. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. Okay. Well, I'm here also to support the Councillor Uri's motion to create a climate change advisory committee for this Shire. The latest Intergovernment Panel on Climate Change, that's the IPCC, makes it abundantly clear that the impact of climate change is intensifying. It's not something we just read about now. It's something, and it's not something that's just going to happen in the future. It's happening now. We can feel it. We can feel it here. We can see it in Gippsland, and we can certainly see it on the news in the Northern Hemisphere this year. There is no doubt that our lives are going to be changed by this crisis. A recent report in Bioscience says that this year is the hottest in the past 100,000 years. Well, basically, you could say since time began, I suppose. And we are seeing alarming and unprecedented successions of climate-related records broken. The article goes on, in this report, it goes on to say that these record-breaking temperatures are increasing the likelihood that we will reach 1.5 degrees warming above the long-term temperature average as early as next year. And the warming past this level means we move into uncharted waters. Scientists are really showing a great deal of concern, and any reading you do as a climate scientists are really panicking. Further warming will have profound impact on all of us and cause untold suffering. To meet this challenge as individuals and as a community, we need knowledge and support. People need to know what is happening, why it is happening, what is at stake and what are their options, and where to get help. Knowledge and understanding are empowering. It brings people together, helps people make informed decisions. To enable this to happen, we also need leadership. Leadership that is inclusive and transparent so that there is trust, and the misinformation that we know, which is so dangerous, just has nowhere to go. I think that this motion to form the Climate Change Advisory Committee is a very positive move towards achieving these points and has the potential to make this a stronger and a together community. Hence, my strong support for this motion.
Thank you, Rosemary. Councillors, are there any questions of the Speaker? I see none. Thank you. We'll now move to call on Councillor Uri to move her... Councillor Buckley, yes. I see you there. You have a question of clarification for us.
Yes, I do. I just find I'd like some clarification on the statement that this is the hottest in 100,000 years. That was a statement made by the last speaker. I'm just wondering where she got her data from to make such an extraordinary type of claim. Because I certainly don't think that we've had the capacity to be able to record our weather patterns for that period of time.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley.
Okay, there's my references. There was an article in The Age on the 25th of October that summarised a report done by Bioscience, which is published on a regular basis and has, I think every 4 years, reports on the climate situation. In the Bioscience, it's much more detailed, and they actually state that, I quoted that statement from that published article. The references, I've got the references here, if you'd be most welcome to follow that up.
Yes, thank you. I just think it's a scientific impossibility, but thank you for sharing that information. Yep, thank you.
Are there any other questions, councillors? Okay, we will now move on to hear Councillor Uri's notice of motion. Thank you, Councillor Uri.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to put the following notice of motion to this council, and it's in two parts. That the officers provide a report to a future council meeting regarding the benefits and costs of establishing a climate change advisory body to council that would be responsible for, but not limited to, supporting the delivery of the Environmental Sustainability Strategy 2022 to 2032 and the Action Plan 2022 to 2026. Working with other East Gippsland agencies on climate adaptation and mitigation and reporting measures, hosting a public climate change forum, and developing a communication strategy to discuss climate change issues in our communities. And secondly, when implementing current and considering future strategies and actions to manage climate change impacts on our Shire, officers would be informed by relevant publicly available up-to-date scientific information, the links to which would be available via Council's website.
Thank you, Councillor Uri. Councillors, do we have a seconder for that motion? Thank you, Councillor Greason. Councillor Uri, would you like to speak to the motion?
I would, thank you, Mayor. Councillors, we all know that the consideration of climate change is not an optional thing for us. It is mandated under the Local Government Act 2020. As the third tier of government and the one closest to the people, we as council have a very particular role to play in setting the tone of the conversation with our community, in leading and in bringing people along with us, as well as enjoying some of the benefits, for example, through cheaper, cleaner, renewable energy. We know that Council is doing a lot already and has a lot to be proud of. I believe an advisory body to Council can be a powerful way to build this particular relationship with community that is so needed. In alignment with our own governance rules, this notice of motion is seeking a report to come to Council to make recommendations about creating this advisory body, the terms of reference, and to advise on resource allocation. As you know, we already have an Agricultural Sector Advisory Committee, a Disability Advisory Committee, and an Economic Development Advisory Committee, all of which undoubtedly add enormously to the work, understanding and the reach of Council in our community. We know that climate change affects us all and all aspects of life in East Gippsland, from our built environment to our safety, to our economic stability. Just think about our tourism industry and our agricultural productivity. It also affects our mental and physical health, and of course our environments and their ability to support the life of plants and animals, the beyond human realm. This topic is surely worthy of a standalone advisory committee. Council has been asked by a number of individuals in the community to join the local government, municipalities and other organisations already declaring a climate emergency. And we've heard from a number of people in the community this evening, and I thank all those who have made submissions to the Council for your eloquent and heartfelt words. The actions outlined in this notice of motion present an alternative path for Council to show that it is committed to reviewing the scientific evidence and increasing its actions in response to what is known about our changing climate and the risks it presents to all of us in this community. And finally, the second part of this notice of motion It is critical that our council transparently declares the sources of knowledge which underpin our climate change risk and associated policy development. This notice of motion seeks to make this regularly reviewed and updated information available on our council website. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Uri. Councillor Greason, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. This motion's about seeking information. It's about seeking a report. I believe that establishing a clear process to understand potential impacts of climate change and therefore ways to mitigate the inherent risks is essential for the healthy future of this region. This must not only be about council assets and works, but supporting local community members, businesses and farmers to build their knowledge base and prepare appropriately. A report from council officers is necessary for us to understand better what this would entail. So I support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. Is the motion opposed? Councillor Buckley. Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Buckley? We can also ask questions of clarification. Kirsten, I'll let Councillor Buckley speak to the motion first, and then we'll go to you for a question, if that's okay.
Mayor, I'm not sure if you're aware, but Councillor White has also opposed the motion and has his hand up.
Yes, I can see that. Thank you, Councillor.
Yep. Look, I thank all the people who have come in to the chambers this evening and for Councillor Uri and Grishan's motion. However, I'm opposed to this motion. I believe that having comments such as global boiling and people being cooked like boiled eggs doesn't help leaders in our community to be supportive of such rhetoric. However, I understand that we have a great duty of care, and we do implement best management practices which mitigate certain concerns in the community. So we already have that in place. I don't think it's necessary to go further down this line of inquiry. There is a minority of councils that have moved forward in this way, but they are a minority. The majority have not. And there are many reasons that support not going forward in this way. So I will not be supporting Councillor Uri's motion this evening, and I will speak to my concerns to the climate change emergency banner in the subsequent motion that will be heard later on today with the officer's recommendation of a climate pledge. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Buckley. I'll just clarify that the motion before us is not considering a climate emergency declaration. That's clear? Thanks.
That's clear. I understand it's an advisory body, but that's what the advisory body, in my view, will lead to, amongst other civil liberty infringements. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillor Van Digel, I believe you have a question.
Yeah, just to Councillor Uri, there's obviously two components to it, so I'm wondering if we approve it. The first part is, asking for a report, so that's not locked in. But the second part, I'm assuming, will be. That's not seeking a report. That's not seeking to come back. That will just go through if this is approved.
That's the intention of the notice of motion, correct?
Yeah. Okay. So it's in two parts, really. Yeah. No worries. Thank you for the clarification.
That's clear.
And I'll foreshadow in a moment that I will support it.
Thank you, Councillor Van Digel. John White, I believe you would like to speak to the motion.
No.
Speak against, sorry.
Thank you for the clarification. Look, honestly, there's a whole lot of talk around that's scaring people. And as Councillor Buckley just said, just for our region, we've only been keeping records for a little over 100 years. There are people around the world, and don't get me wrong, none of us want to see the planet degrade or disintegrate. None of us. Why would you? But there are other people around the world who question some of these more outlandish suppositions from, you know, one side of science versus another. And it worries me that nobody listens to them, because it is the middle ground that we're looking for. It is not extreme of either side. And we find ourselves in a situation now where, yeah, I'm in favour of renewables, absolutely. But we now see batteries, a great clamour for batteries for electric cars and for solar energy storage. And what's happening around the world, third world countries, poor people, they're being exploited at the expense of people who can afford batteries. This is not the way to treat our world population. We're talking about East Gippsland here, but it expands out to the world. And I just don't agree with the scaremongering that's going on. And I think we should take a breath. Just take a breath, even if it's got a little bit of carbon dioxide in it. Let's just take a breath and just listen to other people on the same subject, because this is not done and dusted. You know, you all want to drop the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere. I listened to a podcast a while ago, and it went on for a long while, and the guy was very, very learned. In fact, he was an original from Greenpeace. But has left them over the way they've sort of morphed. But he said that over the last 500 million years, now here we go talking about big numbers, and I don't know how they work this out, but our carbon dioxide is at the lower end of the scale, and climate change alarmists want to reduce it more. So if you reduce it even further, you will have less for plants and trees to take up, so therefore they will come under stress, and therefore mammals, including humans, will not have access to the things they need that comes out of you know, our natural environment. So, you know, I just think we need to sit back and take a breath and just wait a moment. So I intend to oppose this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor White. Would anybody like to speak? Thank you, Councillor Reeves.
Yeah, thanks. I'm supporting the motion for a whole range of reasons. I think this is a great opportunity for officers to present a report to us on the strengths, weakness, opportunities and threats of exactly what's put in front of us. I agree that alarmist rhetoric is just that, it's alarmist, and we have to be mindful of that as leaders in our community about providing a way forward and reassuring the community that we are people of action as well as people of thought. In terms of exploitation around the world, in terms of the renewable energy industry, I think the fossil fuel industry's done that for about 200 years, far more effectively than just about any industry in the world's history. So I think arguing a particular moral ground around that is not relevant at this particular point. I do have concerns around the outcomes if we get a report back that suggests that an advisory body is formed, that we're just mindful, councillors and community, around that whole notion of cancel culture and being cancelled. So, you know, we need to have a really balanced group of people on a committee like that. We need a group of people who are driven by curiosity and education and wanting to learn and understand, and not blame and alarmism. So I think that that's a real embedded component of this that we need to make sure happens. In terms of temperature, it's not just a possibility, it's a certainty. You know, ice core samples from the Antarctic are currently 800,000 years old. They know what the temperature and the CO2 level was on Earth 800 years ago. Greenland was 130,000 years ago. You know, I've recently been in the Serengeti, went to the Olduvai Gorge, saw the oldest human hominids, and they knew what the weather was like when she died 2.1 million years ago. You know, science knows that. We're much more sophisticated. We don't have to think that we've got records for 100 years and we don't know what happened 2 million years ago. You know, I think that there's much more sophistication around that. The evidence is there, but I think we're talking about a motion, a notice of motion, and about progressing the way forward, and I absolutely support that, with those caveats around, especially that cancel culture, that we need to be mindful of that.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Van Diggle.
Thank you. Councillor Reeves has summarised it quite well, but I was a little bit lost with this one because I don't really know much about climate change. 4 years ago, I think to the day, I was actually at the Grand Canyon and they informed me it used to be an ocean. So, you know, like it confuses me a little bit. And, you know, I don't necessarily know, you know, at what speed climate change is accelerating because of human impact. But, you know, I was elected to represent young people and a lot of young people are concerned. And there's 2 points to this. I think anything that we put into sustainability strategy or any strategy should be backed up with where we got the evidence from. So I think point 2 is simple. And the first point, I think there's been a lot of arguments tonight that isn't even about the motion. I think the motion's put forward to bring a report back to us. We have not decided to make an advisory group. We're asking what the implications would be, what the benefits would be. You know, I think the advisory committee, once again, it's not a decision-making forum. So those people who sit on that committee don't come to council and make decisions. We still end up making the decisions. I think a great example where that could have been a benefit is the Crook Street wetlands, Fullerton Drive subdivision, all of these sort of decisions we make. I'm not the expert. So I agree with Councillor Reeves. I think we need to be mindful who goes on there. I don't think it should just be open to, you know, a 14-year-old who cares about climate change, but that it's made up of experts in the field. And I would feel a lot more confident making decisions if I had that, I guess, knowledge and that advice. So we're not asking, a lot of the conversations today I feel like haven't been extremely relevant. So thank you for bringing it forward. I support it.
Thank you, Councillor Van Diggle. Councillors, would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? In that case, I will give the mover of the motion the right of reply.
Thank you, Mayor. The importance of working with community is a key priority for Council when considering leadership in the area of climate change. Our 2032 net zero target refers to our own emissions, not those of the community, so we need to start working more with the community, in my view. There is an understandable fear of traumatising our communities by talking about climate change. Many people we hear are already stressed, anxious and carrying the effects of previous bushfire events. I've been able to clarify from a respected psychologist and supporter of many East Gippsland communities post the Black Summer bushfires, as well as the Australian Psychological Association, that avoiding speaking about an imminent risk or threat can actually be quite detrimental for people and is not recommended. For people, perhaps particularly young people, to be told the truth relating to climate change is critical. And also for them knowing that decision makers and leaders in our community are knowledgeable about the facts and are responding responsively and decisively to do whatever possible to adapt and mitigate. And they're given the opportunity through knowing the truth to themselves act are the 2 things which can most reduce people's stress and anxiety. The importance of working with community is critical to Council's climate response, and setting up an advisory committee to Council should be considered as a key mechanism which would support Council's relationship with community. I just wanted to say that I've really appreciated the discussion with individual councillors in the last couple of days in particular, as I prepared to bring this notice of motion before Council for consideration. In particular, I heard a bit about how some, perhaps many people, can feel not listened to, and any questions or uncertainties about climate change are shut down in a dogmatic way by those who are clear about the dangers and risks of climate change and who are seeking more urgent action. This is not good enough in our communication, and I apologise if this has been me. We need to hear this view because we all need to be on board with this issue. That is why, as one of the terms of reference in any advisory body to Council, a communication strategy is critical, and also why it is so important to make it clear that the need to act on climate change is related to current, best science. It's not a belief. It's the implementation of rational policies based on the best science, and the associated risks to our community. Councillors, there's not much risk in supporting this notice of motion, which calls for a report to Council primarily. It's a reasonable and measured proposal, and I urge you to vote in support of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Uri. I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those for? Those against? The motion is carried.
Mayor, may I call for division 2?
We'll now move on to agenda item number 3. Councillor Reeves.
Mayor, I'm just going to call for a division, please.
Yep.
So we'll just redo that vote. So the names of people voting one way or another will be recorded in the minutes. So I'd just like to put the motion to the vote and ask for all those in favour to raise their hand. Councillor Reeves, Councillor Uri, Councillor Crook, Councillor Greason, Councillor Van Diggle, and all those opposed. Councillor Buckley, Councillor White, Councillor Stowe, and Councillor Allen. Thank you. We'll now move through the agenda to item number 3, deferred business. I maybe, if this is an appropriate time, people in the gallery, if you would like to stay for the rest of the meeting, you are more than welcome to do so. We will be discussing some enthralling matters. Otherwise, if you'd like to take this opportunity, I'm happy to take a short pause for you to leave.
He's very polite, isn't he? Yeah.
And thank you for coming tonight.
He's clearing the gallery.
Okay, thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to deferred business. Are there any matters that need to be deferred?
No, there aren't, Mayor.
Thank you, CEO. Agenda item number 4, Councillor and Delegates Report. I believe Council has resolved to submit Delegates Reports in a written format from now on. So we'll just encourage councillors to do that. Thank you. Agenda item number 5, which is Officer Reports. We'll now move on to Officer Reports, and the first report is item 5.1.1, a Climate Change Pledge. Before the report is presented, I'll ask Robin Hermans if she would like to come forward and make her submission. And I apologise for suggesting that the gallery leave before you do that.
Thank you. Again, it's just a short statement of support. The Voluntary Climate Pledge on today's agenda, I've just been impressed with the involvement in programs over the last 10 years. Council has made major efficiency upgrades. They've committed to the Take 2 Climate Change Pledge, and they've developed their 2022 to 32 environmental sustainability strategy. These things all demonstrate a concern for addressing the impacts of climate change. I believe the Take 2 Climate Change Pledge is no longer current, and I think this idea of making a voluntary climate pledge is a good replacement. The costs of making this pledge seem quite negligible, and a public pledge that council makes will build on the steady work undertaken by the council so far. It also reflects changing social attitudes and signals council's leadership on climate change to the people of East Gippsland. So I fully support council adopting the first option. Just make the voluntary climate pledge. That's all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Robin. Are there any questions of clarification from councillors of Robin? No. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you.
I'd now like to ask Nathan Misuka, Acting General Manager for Assets and Environment, to please present the report to council. Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report which provides council the opportunity to make a public, voluntary council pledge underneath the provisions of the Climate Change Act 2017. This option has been established to acknowledge and promote the efforts of Victorian local governments who are taking action on climate change. There are a few key points I'd like to just assist councillors with the consideration of the report. So, as explained within the report before you, in June 2021, the Victorian Government made council pledges more flexible in order to reflect the breadth of activity being undertaken to reduce emissions across Victoria. Council has the opportunity to submit the adopted Environmental Sustainability Strategy 22 to 2032 to demonstrate a public commitment to climate change action, and that would also be supported by the targets set in there towards a net zero emissions profile for council and in future our community. A climate pledge may be formalised via a letter addressed to the Victorian Government Minister for Climate Action and signed by a suitably authorised representative of the council. The report is presented for your consideration, and thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Nathan. Councillor, are there any questions of clarification? Councillor Van Diggle?
So just to confirm, this comes to no cost, right? There's no cost whatsoever involved, and by taking the pledge, we're not suddenly liable to do more than our sustainability strategy.
Through you, Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor Van Diggle. Your comments there is correct in terms that really this just emphasises the work that's set out by Council's existing strategy, the Environmental Sustainability Strategy 22 to 32. Thanks.
So, in the end, what do you think the impact will be? Why would we take the pledge? I guess in someone who's an expert in the field.
Through you, Mayor, and thank you again for the follow-up question, Councillor Van
Sorry
Diggle.
for the hard
not sure I
questions.
would say I'm an expert, but certainly pleased to work with people really knowledgeable in this space, and I think Council should be pleased with the staff we have working in this area for us. I would say, in terms of additional commitments, the strategy is quite ambitious in and of itself now. The team are really excited and pleased to be working in that direction. In terms of the benefit of making the pledge itself, it's really an opportunity for Council to recognise, as we've heard from some of the speakers in the gallery tonight, their concerns publicly and promote the work that Council's doing. I think it'd be fantastic to see our name added to the list, but I'll leave that for Councillors' discretion. Thank you.
Councillor Buckley, you have a question.
Oh, yes, I have a couple of questions, Mayor. My first is, can you show me the evidence that human emissions of carbon dioxide drive global warming, which is what this pledge is based on?
Through you, Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor Buckley. I guess firstly in my response and some of the guidance I had before today is to really focus on the matters outlined in the report. The report doesn't refer to or describe emissions reporting or scientific reports. What it does do, though, it refers to the legislation which we currently operate in Victoria. The Climate Change Act 2017 compels Council to take action in the adaptation and mitigation of climate change. And the report really refers to that legislative obligation.
Thank you for your response. Well, I'll put it to you that has never actually been proven. So, I'm struggling to support something that doesn't
Point of order,
have any...
Mayor.
real proof.
Yes, thank you. I don't think we're here to debate the merits of climate science.
Mayor,
we're actually
not
here to
debating
discuss
officers.
the...
Thank you.
Councillor Reeves. Upheld. Councillor Buckley, if you could confine your questions to the report in front of us, please.
So the report is to have a pledge to support net zero, correct?
Through you, Mayor, and thank you again for the follow-up question, Councillor Buckley. The climate pledge would be made on the basis of Council's existing adopted environmental sustainability strategy. Thank you.
Which is to support net zero. That's the basis of our strategy. Is that correct?
Through you, Mayor, and just following up to clarify, there's a whole range of actions in the environmental sustainability strategy, and it does include an action that talks about setting out Council's net zero emissions strategy to 2032. And as again, we're required to do that under Victorian legislation.
Okay, all right, thank you. So can you explain what net zero is? Because if community don't understand what net zero is, as far as I'm aware, we breathe in about 0.04% of carbon dioxide, and we breathe out 4% to get rid of the carbon dioxide.
Mayor, point of order. I think
I'm just confused.
Sorry, Councillor Buckley. Yes, Councillor Reeves.
I think the question should be contained to the questioning the report that's in front of us.
Okay, granted. It's very difficult as a councillor to support something when we're not given an evidence base to do so. So just I'll speak further to it when it comes to the motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. I will just remind you that our environment strategy was passed unanimously by Council and does present quite a considerable evidence base. Are there any further questions of the reporting officer? Councillor Stowe.
Yes, thank you. I note that we're committed to net zero by 2032, 3 years ahead of the state government. My question is, if we don't sign the pledge, will that affect us in any way of attaining net zero?
Through you, Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor Stowe. Given Council's already adopted the environmental sustainability strategy, that work would continue, to answer your question. Thank you.
Councillor, are there any other further questions? Councillors, there is an officer report recommendation in the report. Do I have a mover for that motion, for that recommendation? Councillor Reeves.
Happy to move
Thank
it.
you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Greason. Thank you. Councillor Reeves, would you like to speak to
Yeah, sure,
the
just
recommendation?
briefly. Look, about this report, I think that it responds to the community's petition that we saw in 2020 in a way that I think is considered and reasonable. It actually addresses or gives weight to our environmental sustainability strategy and puts light into that as well. I think it addresses many of the community concerns. I think that by making this pledge, we are aligning ourselves in the action towards Victoria's Climate Change Act 2017, and I think that that's a compliance requirement for us anyway. And councillors, we're doing good things already. So I think that by actually making this pledge and letting the community know, it's a way of actually promoting the good work that's being done. It doesn't ask us to do any more. We are doing good things already, and I think there's no reason why we shouldn't acknowledge that and promote that. That's what this is about, and councillors, I hope you support it for that very reason. We are doing great things, and even in this council already, you've seen that already. So I hope you will support it.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Councillor Greason, would you like to speak to the motion?
Look, I think what Councillor Reeves has said basically sums up what I feel about it, that this is really a title. It's kind of giving ourselves a badge that says, you know, we're doing great things, and it's letting the community and local business know about it, and it's also promoting it to external organisations and people. So I support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. Is the motion opposed? Would anybody like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Stowe.
Yes, I'd like to speak against it. Mark referred to community petition. it's a lobby group petition, not a community petition. And if we responded to every petition we get, yeah, I don't know that that would work. The other thing is, I note that of all the councils in Victoria, there's only roughly a quarter signed up to this, and I rather suspect there's a very good reason the others haven't signed up. We're doing some great work. We're going to meet our obligations well before we're required to. I see no reason to commit ourselves to something like this.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Councillor Buckley.
Look, I support Councillor Stowe's position on this, and I think that we have to also, regardless of acknowledge that yes, we are doing some best management practices, which we should do regardless of what the debate is about. When we look at the time continuum, which was, relevant to discussions this evening, we're still in an interglacial warm period between two ice ages. That is the science behind this. And so if we look at times, if we want to discuss continuums, because we're in a continuum now, and for me to support a pledge, then I would have to understand that global boiling was actually really, proven. And at this point, I'm not convinced of that. So when you look at the continuum, in the time of Jesus, it's cooled. Since the Dark Ages, it's warmed. Since the medieval times, we've cooled. And since the Little Ice Age, we've warmed. So it's all about perspective. It's what we measure over time. And so the cycles of warming and cycles of cooling are to be expected. That doesn't mean we shouldn't have best management practices, but I'm not about to support a climate pledge because it is a lobby group and there are two different views of science from scientists.
Sorry, Councillor Buckley, can I just clarify for you? This is not at the request of a lobby group. This is to endorse an existing council strategy. And I understand that, Mayor, although... Thank you. Just you referred to a lobby group where it's actually in relation to an existing council strategy.
And the council strategy is in place. I don't see that we have to go and stick big badges on ourselves to go with a minority group of councillors. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? In that case, I'll put the motion. Councillor Van Diggle.
I'm trying really hard to talk to matters because sometimes I just vote without having my say. But, I've spent the last 3 years not being very climate aware, or I haven't really advocated, but this literally makes no difference to, what we're doing except for to make people who are extremely concerned in the community feel better about the work that we're doing and knowing that council support them. So if it makes no difference, but just to make some of our community feel more comfortable with the work that we're doing, I don't understand why we wouldn't support it. If you were asking for a massive financial investment or, with the climate emergency, there were a lot more requirements. This is just a pledge to show what we're doing, broadcasting a little further than just East Gippsland and just making a portion of our community feel more listened to. I don't see why we wouldn't do that. So yes, I support it.
Thank you, Councillor Van Diggle. Councillors, would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Allen.
Look, just to follow on what Kirsten said, it may make one portion of the community feel good, but I think it's going to alienate a huge portion of the community because it's virtue signalling. And if there's one thing that turns people off, it's virtue signalling. Jane said it's putting on a badge to show what we're doing. That's signalling our virtue. We've been out there quietly achieving. We're 13 years in front of the state government target for zero. They're 2045, we're 2032. We're currently members of Gippsland Alliance for Climate Action. We're well ahead of our own ambitious targets for zero by 2032. We're out there doing it. I don't see what this pledge adds to it, but I do see it alienating a lot of people in the community. Absolutely.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillors, would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? In that case, Councillor White.
I would just like to speak against it, but not to say any more than what Arthur's just said. I think he's put that in such a good tone, and congratulations to the way he spoke against this document. So that's just my say on it. To just say to Arthur, well done.
Thank you, Councillor White. Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Greason. Sorry, Councillor Greason.
Do I have a right of
governance
reply?
advice there. I don't believe you're allowed to speak for it again. If there are no new questions, councillors, and nobody would like to speak for or against the motion, I'll give the mover of the motion the right of reply. Thank you, Councillor Reeves.
Look, thanks. And I think that everything that's been said is really valid. And I think that the risk of this being a virtue signalling exercise is quite valid. And so I respect the comments that have been made. But I think it's up to us to make it more than that, and to actually to think like people of action and act like people of thinking. And this is an opportunity to do that, to actually show that we've thought about this and that we can act in a way that actually is beyond virtue signalling, and that we are acting in a way that I think is going to be beneficial to the community. It's not just about emissions, it's saving us money, and we know that. You know, I've been around this council long enough to see our electricity bills drop due to installation of LED lights, solar panels, reduced energy bills. We've got a contract in front of us around installing a much more efficient heating system at one of our aquatic centres. That's the sort of stuff that we're doing, and that's the action of the virtue signalling. And I think that this is a really great opportunity to do that. I'm really proud that we can make this pledge, and those people who may feel uncomfortable with it, well, I think there's a great opportunity for us to bring them along on that journey. And as I said earlier, that we just need to be mindful of that cancel culture and make sure that those people who have genuine curiosity and genuine interest and want to learn, we give them the opportunity for us to explain why we're doing it and bring them along on the journey. I hope we can, and I think we've got an opportunity to do that, councillors. So give it a crack. What have you got to lose by supporting it, councillors?
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those for? All those against? The motion is carried.
I'll call for a division, Mayor. Please.
Certainly. I'll ask for all those voting for the motion to please raise their hand again. Councillor Reeves, Councillor Uri, Councillor Crook, Councillor Greason, Councillor Van Diggle, and all those against. Councillor Allen, Councillor Stowe, Councillor Buckley and Councillor White. Thank you, councillors. We will give you a moment to leave if you like. Maybe at the right time this time.
The exciting stuff's about to start. Don't go.
That's right. Thank you, councillors, officers, people viewing tonight. The next report is item 5.1.3, CON 2024-1617, replacement from an air conditioning unit at the Lakes Aquatic Centre, plant installation works. Nathan Masuka, Acting General Manager for Assets and Environment, would you like to present the report, please? Oh. Where are we? There we are. Apologise, people, I got a bit ahead of myself there. The next report is item 5.1.2, Capital Works and Major Projects, Q1 2023-24. Nathan Masuka, again, Acting General Manager for Assets and Environment. Would you please present the report?
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Councillors, before you is a report covering the Capital Works program for Q1 2023-24. This is a regular report to Council and is the companion report to the Q1 financial report, also listed in tonight's agenda. Council commenced the year with 217 separate projects under management and an adopted budget of $57.5 million for the current financial year. When added to the final carry forwards of $69.1 million worth of capital projects, this resulted in a total budget of $126.6 million for this financial year. At the end of the first quarter, I'm pleased to share on behalf of the team that together with expenditure and commitments combined, a total of $43.24 million is currently been set aside. That is around 34% of the adopted budget, representing 237 projects under management. During the quarter, the budget has been revised down to $121.2 million due to two significant reasons. Firstly, $2.2 million is carried forward into the 24-25 budget. Grant expenditure is reduced by $3.8 million, and this is predominantly due to the rephasing of the Cradalong Walk Stage 2 grant, as reported to Council in August this year. The holding account transactions are detailed in the report. In summary, they show savings in the quarter of $857,000, distributions in the quarter of $680,000, and the balance of the holding account at 30 September being $178,000. Fortunately for me this evening, also present is Paul Oakes. He's our Coordinator of Project Planning and Design, who is available to respond to any questions of a technical nature. And the report is presented for consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Nathan. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification? Councillor Uri.
Thank you. Thank you, Nathan, for the report. So we have 237 separate projects. That's still sort of flat chat, I think, isn't it? It seems like a large number to me, but I can't exactly recall in the last report how many there were. But there's still a lot going on. There's still a lot of funding being received for these projects.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Uri, for your question. I would have to agree with your statement, although having not worked directly within the team, but observing it through the updates we get through our regular meetings, Paul's team are certainly incredibly busy. Paul, you're online. I would just pass the question over to yourself if you wanted to make any further comments.
Yes, thank you, Councillor, and through you, Mayor. Yes, the team's very busy. We're still getting projects coming through. The grants have slowed down. However, we do have multi-year projects that we're still undertaking.
Right, yes, and I gather there's still a lot of movement of carryovers and so on, which makes a difference to this report. I was just looking at one particular line item, and it's on page 32 of our notes. It's number 12189. And it's the mobile library bus. So I was just wondering, I know we've had reports recently of a bit of mechanical difficulties with some of our library buses, but I think this one is possibly the third library bus that's listed on here as a separate project. Would that be correct?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Uri, and through you, Mayor, I'll just refer that on to Paul as well. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor, and through you, Mayor. Sorry, I'm not aware over the mobile library bus. That's more of a plant concern, and I look after project planning and design in relation to capital projects.
Okay.
So I'm sorry I can't answer that. I'll take that on notice.
Oh, thank you. That would be good. Thanks very much, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Uri. Councillor Buckley, you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So it's good to see that there's been some cost savings identified. Was there any blowouts in any of our capital works programs that you can identify that perhaps we should be aware of, or unforeseen blowouts?
Through you, Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor Buckley. Again, I'll refer to Paul Oakes, who's with us this evening. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Councillor Buckley, and through you, Mayor. There have been a number of projects which have had escalated costs. Most of those projects have already been brought to Council's attention.
Is there any that you can identify, that major ones that are of concern?
Thanks, Councillor, through you, Mayor. To be honest, Councillor, every project that has an escalation in cost is a concern. The ones that we have brought some forward before, which I think have been in confidential meetings with Council. I'd need to take the CEO's guidance on whether we can actually mention those in this forum. Some of the other projects that we have small escalations in costs. In regards to major concerns, the major concerns ones will be brought up to Council in a confidential meeting.
Did the CEO wish to respond to Mr. Oakes's commentary?
Through you, Mayor, thank you. It's a bit of a chicken and egg thing, so I don't know what Paul will necessarily refer to, so I'm not sure indeed what matter might be raised. So taking a precautionary approach, I would suggest that councillors see a monthly version of this report, and so we can provide that update and seek to clarify any of that question. And then if you wish that to be flagged publicly, then we can be really clear about what's going to be put into the public domain, so not to breach any confidential reporting. That would be my preference.
Thank you, CEO.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, can I just raise a point there? That may I?
Yes.
So that information is all contained in item 5.1.2.1, which has the details of all the actuals, expenditures, carry forwards. So every line item has that detail for Councillor Buckley. Just have to read through the report and they're all there.
Thank you, Mayor Reeves. I'm quite aware of that.
No longer Mayor.
Thank you, councillors.
Councillor. Sorry, I couldn't tell, but thank you.
Councillor White, you have a question.
Yes, I do. Probably maybe go through Anthony on this one, but he did assure us today that there was nothing confidential in tonight's meeting. So I guess if I speak to something, it's on the public record. I just for you, Paul, it's about the Lakes Entrance slipway upgrade, and it's listed in the holding account transactions, and it's quite a large amount of money, and I understand from the way this is done that that's actually a saving, and I'm really a bit curious and quite pleased that we've managed to save some of the what was meant to be spent at the slipway. Does that mean it's something's on hold, or is it completed and that's what we've saved?
Thanks, Councillor White, and through you, Mayor. Yes, that is exactly right. That is what we have saved. Initially, we put that project out to tender, and the supporting tenders far exceeded the budget. Council then took the opinion that we were going to do it in-house using our own teams. So we've used the Parks and Gardens team, we've used the works crew through the senior coordinator, and we're coming at quite a large cost saving. The project is complete, by the way. We're just waiting for permits to open it.
Yeah, well, that is outstanding, and well done to the in-house crews, because if that's what they're able to do, perhaps we should ask them to do more.
Thanks, Councillor White. Councillor Buckley, you have another question?
Just a comment, Mayor. Some positive feedback from community in regards to the World and the opening of the netball courts, and some of the viewing that I saw on video. It's just excellent. So well done to the whole council and everyone involved in that project. Wonderful to see. Even though we had some cost blowouts there, but that was due to unforeseen circumstances. But thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. It is indeed a great project. Councillors, are there any further questions? In that case, councillors, there is an officer recommendation in the report. Do I have a mover? Councillor Uri, thank you. Councillors, do I have a seconder? Councillor Greason, thank you. Councillor Uri, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I don't think so, Mr Mayor. This report is always interesting. There's always a lot of information in there and represents a lot of work behind the figures, so it's always good to receive it. Thank you.
Councillor Greason, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I won't add to that. Thank you.
Is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? The motion is carried. I'll try and get this right this time. We'll now move to item 5.1.3, Con 2024-16-17, replacement of air conditioning unit, Lakes Aquatic Centre plant installation works. Acting General Manager for Assets and Environment, I believe you have another report for us.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you. Councillors, before you is a report seeking to award a contract for the replacement of the air handling unit at the Lakes Entrance Aquadrome. The project is designed to provide a fit-for-purpose hall heating and ventilation system suited to the needs of the existing facility. This will replace the current system, which is no longer functioning to the level required in a public pool. The project includes the replacement of heat pumps with variable speed drive, refurbishing the hydraulic separator, introducing new pool hall ventilation system, upgrading mechanical switchboards, and introduction of a building management system which allows real-time adjustments to be made. The replacement was unscheduled but cannot be delayed. As a result, other less urgent recreation centre projects will be delayed to fund this contract, including some equipment purchases. The nature of indoor pools and the impact of chlorine in the air has meant that the current system has not reached its full design life. This has been taken into consideration with the design of the new system. This report is accompanied by a confidential attachment which details the tendering process and the recommendations of the tender evaluation panel. Should councillors wish to discuss any elements of the attachment, this will need to be discussed in camera. Again, present with us tonight is Paul Oakes, Coordinator Project Planning and Design, who is available to respond to questions of a technical nature. The report is presented for your consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Nathan. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification? Councillor Buckley.
Thank you. This is just more of perhaps an operational or procurement question. When we purchase these systems, that they would come with some sort of guarantee, I would imagine, or warranty, and you know, in the case of a malfunction, would it cover the costs, or so that's just my question.
Through you, Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor Buckley. From what I understand in preparing for tonight is that parts of the system, including the heat pumps, were installed in around 2015. But I may refer to Paul Oakes if he can provide further advice in terms of the terms of warranty underneath those systems. Thank you, Paul.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Buckley, and through you, Mayor. The warranties for the system that it was installed at the Lakes Aquatic Centre have expired.
That's a shame. Thank you.
It's always the way.
Councillors, are there any other questions of clarification of the officers? I see none. Councillors, there is an officer recommendation in the report. Do I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Allen. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Van Diggle just beat you to it, Councillor Reeves. Councillor Allen, would you like to speak to the motion?
This is an unscheduled piece of equipment replacement, but the Aquadome in Lakes is hugely popular, and you know, people value it and appreciate it, and to keep the place functioning, we need to make this purchase, and I think it would be much appreciated in the community.
Thank you. And could I now ask that you please complete the blanks in the screen that you can see there for the tender information or that the blanks are completed? And Councillor Allen, could I just confirm that the information you're seeing on screen is correct? And Councillor Van Diggle, would you like to speak to the motion?
I don't have much more to add except for that the pool is a very utilised facility and we don't really have much choice. So, of course, I support it.
Thank you. Is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Reeves.
I'm happy to speak for it. Swimming pools are a really integral part of our community health and wellbeing activities and our plan. But if you have a look at the price there, it actually goes to the heart of the actual cost of these provisions. And the fact that every swim, if it was a full cost recovery, would probably be a $50 or $60 affair. So just a reminder to every community member that we're all subsidising the swims and the activities to keep these pools going, and that's a good thing. You know, we socialise the cost so that those who really need it can actually get access to the pools. But yes, $1 million upgrade in the blink of an eye.
Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Uri.
Just briefly to say I was very pleased to read in the report that there won't be any interruption to the use of the pool as this new piece of equipment is being installed. So I think the community would be very pleased to hear that as well. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? In that case, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And do I need to ask for people who are against? Carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We'll now move on to agenda item 5.2.1, Council Meeting Resolution Register. Ms Johnson, General Manager for Business Excellence, would you please like to present the report?
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, before you've got a report titled Council Meeting Resolution Register, which is seeking to note the resolution registers provided in attachments 1 and 2. The high-level overview is that it's obviously incredibly important that council resolutions are a vital measure of council's performance, transparency and accountability to the community. The Chief Executive Officer is responsible for ensuring that the decisions of the council are implemented without undue delay. Attachment 1 of the report provides an update on any outstanding actions from the previous report tabled on the 25th of July 2023, of which all but one have been completed. And attachment 2 of the report details from 1 July 2023 to 30th September 2023, there were 24 open council resolutions, of which 23 have been completed, 1 is in progress. As council officers are waiting for an external response or the matter is on hold, and there are 4 closed council resolutions, of which 2 have been completed and 2 are in progress as council officers are waiting for an external response or the matter is on hold. The report is presented for your consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification? No questions. Councillors, there is an officer recommendation in the report. Do I have a mover? Sure. Councillor Reeves, thank you. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Uri, thank you. Councillor Reeves, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, it's a pretty regular report and very procedural to me. It's good to see that it's documented, but otherwise, no, happy to move it.
Thank you. Councillor Uri, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? In that case, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously, CEO. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to agenda item 5.2.2, the financial report period ending September 30, 2023. Ms Johnson, the General Manager for Business Excellence, would you please like to present your report?
Thank you again, Mayor. Councillors, before you is the report titled Finance Report, period ended 30 September 2023, and again it goes in conjunction with the report that the Acting General Manager presented before on the capital program for the same quarter. It's seeking to adopt the finance report for the 3-month period, being 30 September 2023, as outlined until 1st of July 2023 until the 30th of September 2023, as outlined in the attachments 1 to 7. The high-level points for Council to consider are: the Local Government Act requires the quarterly budget report to be presented to Council, detailing the financial performance against budget. There's a forecast operating surplus of 8.205 million, compared with the adopted budget operating surplus of 43.559 million. It's attributed to, there's been an advance payment of the 2023 Victorian Grants Commission allocation, which was in the 22-23 financial year, which reduced the forecast operating grant income by 18.7 million. There's been some timing of receipt of capital grant income of 3.3 million, and there's been an increase in expenditure of 15 million as a result of grant-funded projects that were incomplete at the end of the 22-23 financial year. The expected end-of-year cash position of 46.49 million is 4.516 million greater than the adopted budget as a result of a more favourable 2022-23 end-of-year cash position that was estimated when we adopted the 23-24 budget, together with an estimated value of capital works cash flow being less than the adopted budget by 2.519 million for council cash. You probably will also note that I'm relatively new to this role, and I also have Manager of Finance Liz Collins here, who's available to answer technical questions that you may have tonight, councillors. There are recommendations on page 57 of the report for your consideration. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms Johnson. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification?
Sure. I have a question, if I can. Sorry,
Councillor Reeves, thank you.
Just for full clarity, have the reports been prepared and presented in accordance with the correct legislation?
Thank you, Councillor. And through you, Mayor.
Through you, Mayor, yes. Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Yes, they have. I can confirm that.
Councillors, are there any further questions? Councillor Greason.
For my understanding, please, either Sarah or Liz, would you mind explaining in a bit of detail the forecast reduction in operating surplus of $35.354 million and what the implications of that are? Thank you.
Thank you. Good question, Councillor. And through you, Mayor, I did explain at a high level the dot points there, but I'll hand over to Liz, please, to give us a really detailed background on that one.
Through you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Greason, for the question. The three main components, as Ms Johnson had identified, the advance payment of the Grants Commission. We received an advance payment of $19.9 million last year, which impacted the 18.7 into our budget this year. That money was sitting in our account last year and went into our operating surplus last year. So the same with the unexpended grants. There's a huge component of that related to some of the bushfire support and building projects that we're doing for the on behalf of the community, as well as a whole range of other grants that came in last year that will be spent this year. And there was also, I guess, offsetting that, I think that was about $37 million in reduction in surplus, but there has also been about $2 million of additional income forecast for interest on investments and other contributions, reimbursements and fees to bring that back to $35 million. But the two main components, the $15 million and the 18.7, that money was in the bank and in our operating result for the previous year. So if you look across the 2 years, it still nets out to the same.
that's really clear. Thank you very much.
Councillors, are there any further questions? There is an officer recommendation in the report. Do I have a mover? Councillor Allen. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Stowe, thank you. Would you like to speak to the motion, Councillor Allen?
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I think it's pretty straightforward, even if sometimes it looks like gobbledygook. And as Jane has just illustrated, we can always ask Sarah, who will ask Liz. So,
thank you.
No.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Stowe, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, it's been beautifully summed up by Councillor Allen.
Councillors, is the motion opposed? Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously, CEO. Thank you, Liz. Councillors, next report is item 5.3.1, Planning Delegations Policy 2022, a 12-month review. Mr McConnell, General Manager for Place and Community, would you like to present your report, please?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, before you is a report that's seeking your endorsement of a revised planning delegations policy. Some of the key points for your consideration: the policy sets out the framework for delegation of planning decisions to staff in accordance with guidelines that are set out by the Victorian Government and Council's instrument of delegation. And a key principle of that policy is that operational planning decisions by Council should be the exception, with officers delegated the responsibility to make most of the decisions in accordance with the Planning and Environment Act. The policy outlines the circumstances and processes for planning decisions to be referred to Council or called up by councillors for decision at a Council meeting. And these circumstances include matters of significant public interest, where there's a number of objections lodged, or where there's a policy matter to be resolved, or where there are certain conflicts of interest at play that need to be managed in a transparent way. The current policy was in operation for just over 12 months, and there was a commitment to review that policy after 12 months of operation, and so we bring this report to you. Over that 12-month period, there's been 542 planning permits issued under delegation. 45 notices of intent were communicated to councillors, where we informed councillors of the decision that officers were intending to make. Of the permits considered by councillors, 5 applications were referred to council by officers in line with those matters in relation to public interest or conflict of interest. 1 application was called up by councillors, 4 permits were approved as a result through council resolution, and 2 permits were refused. Of the 552 determinations made, only 2 matters resulted in a council decision that differed from the officer's recommendation. Under the proposed changes to the policies, both of these matters would still be referred to councillors, or subject to a notice of intent and available for councillors to call the decision up. Some refinements have been made to the policy to assist in further streamlining without diluting the ability of councillors to again call up applications for councillor determination if that's what is desired. Council will continue to receive weekly reports on applications received and notification of proposed decisions where there are 10 or more objections that have been received, or where it's proposed to refuse an application. And councillors are encouraged to seek further information from officers on any particular applications of interest. The revised policy provides for transparency and accountability in the decision making, and our recommendation is that council adopts the draft policy. So the report's before you, councillors, and happy to assist in providing responses to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr McConnell. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Stowe.
Thank you. Could I just ask, will this proposal speed up the approval of applications, and also is it similar to what other like councils are doing?
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. So firstly, the intention in the revision of the policy is to streamline and provide the opportunity to speed up some determination of some matters. So where there are some matters which are currently referred to council under a notice of intent, that process takes a couple of weeks to work its way through, and this, by being more focused about which matters are referred to council through the notice of intent process, most of those applications will be able to move through the system more quickly by a couple of weeks. So that's the first thing. So it is more streamlined. Secondly, the practices adopted by councillors across Victoria range greatly in terms of the delegations, from some councillors that have less delegation to some councillors that in effect have full delegation and no matters are decided in the council chamber. So again, what I think we have before you is a policy which seeks to streamline and be efficient in the determination of planning matters, but at the same time gives councillors the capacity to call up matters that councillors think are important to consider in the chamber.
Councillor Buckley, I can see you have a question.
Yes, I'm just wondering, when this policy was drafted, it came to a surprise to me that in its making there was a provision that it would take 3 councillors to call up any item. Can you explain to me why that decision was made and who made it, please, Stuart?
So thank you, Councillor Buckley. So the provision that there are 3 councillors who are required to call, indicate their desire to call up a matter hasn't changed. So that's the same as has been previous, and to date has worked, I believe, quite effectively. And what it is a reflection of is it's, I think, an intention to ensure that the matters called up before council for consideration are matters of broader interest in the councillor group rather than a matter of interest to a particular councillor.
Okay.
I think if you reflect on the practice to date, there hasn't been a circumstance, I believe, where the 3 councillors hasn't been obtained.
Thank you. My position, I believe that any councillor should be able to call up a matter regardless. That's just my personal position on it. So my other question is in relation to the IBAC Sanderson report, and the Minister for Planning develops and introduces amendments to the Planning and Environment Act to remove statutory planning responsibility from councillors and to introduce determinative planning panels for statutory planning matters where a local council is currently the responsible authority. I find this as an erosion of democracy and what councillors are elected to do, and I'm deeply concerned about that.
Mayor, point of order.
Councillor Buckley, could I just ask you to confine your question to the matter before us?
This is a question.
Please?
My point is that we're asking questions, not making political statements.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves.
No, I'm asking a question, and Mayor,
if you could get to the question, please.
And I would like to ask some respect in the chambers too, please, Mayor.
At all times. Thank you, Councillor Buckley.
Excuse me, point of order.
Yes, Councillor Reeves.
Implicit Councillor Buckley suggesting I'm not being respectful, and I'd like that retracted, please. I am being respectful.
I think the comment was directed at me, Councillor Reeves.
Well, even more so than Mayor.
I'm happy to see the matter not be pursued at this time. Councillor Buckley, if you'd like to continue your question, please.
So my question is the officer's position in regards to the IBAC Sanderson recommendation supported or not supported?
So thanks, Councillor Buckley. At this stage, officers haven't formed a view in relation to the Operation Sandon matters. Those are recommendations of an integrity body that are yet to be responded to by state government, and when state government responds to it, that's a point at which then council will need to form a view about those matters, and at that time officers will be happy to provide appropriate advice to assist councillors in their consideration. What I would note is there are some matters that the Sandon report raised, which we've taken appropriate consideration of. So, for example, an expectation that in calling up a matter for consideration in the chambers, that reasons are given for that. So there's a proper basis for matters to be brought into the chamber for decision. So, but they're relatively minor matters in the overall scheme of things in the Sandon recommendations.
Thank you, Mr McConnell. And I'll just remind everybody that we are discussing a planning delegations policy, not the IBAC report here. Thank you. Councillor White, I believe you have a question.
Yes, I do, thanks. Stuart, obviously from this you are now suggesting that less matters will come before council for decision making. Often when something does come to council and there's a lot of debate over it and the decision doesn't go the way of one party or the other, it finishes up at VCAT. Now, is that same principle possible through a rejection or somebody not liking a decision that the planners make, that they can still take it to VCAT without it actually coming through the chamber?
Thanks, Councillor White. So there's two parts to respond to your question. Firstly, the second part, whether the decision is made by officers under delegation or whether it's made by the council in the chamber, the applicant or any party's rights to seek review at VCAT are unchanged. They're exactly the same, so that doesn't affect that aspect. What I would say is when we've looked at the matters that have come to council for consideration over the last 12 months, those matters would still have come to council for consideration even with the changes that are proposed in this revised policy, because generally they've been raised in one of three things. There's been substantial public interest in a matter and the matter was referred to councillors by officers. There were a couple of matters where there was a conflict of interest matter at play and they would still have been referred through to council for consideration. And there was a matter that was called up by councillors where that was in essence a response to matters raised by constituents, and that still has the opportunity for that same mechanism to apply in the future.
Thank you, Mr McConnell. Councillor Buckley, you have another question.
No, I just want to foreshadow an amendment to the motion.
Noted. Councillors, are there any other questions of clarification? In which case there is an officer recommendation before us. Do I have a mover for that recommendation, please? Councillor Reeves.
Happy to move it.
And a seconder, Councillor Uri. Just seek some governance advice on at what point the motion can be amended, which I believe has been foreshadowed by Councillor Buckley.
That can be put forward now.
Thank you, Mayor. The amendment to the motion would be point 3, notes that the operation of the planning delegation policy will be reviewed after 2 years. I would like it to be amended that will be reviewed after 12 months or 1 year instead of 2 years.
Councillor Reeves, as the mover of the motion, is that amendment acceptable to you?
Just, Mr Mayor, may I ask a point of clarification, a question of the officers before we go on to...
Yes, you may.
Thank you. I'm just wondering about the effect of that proposed amendment. Is that something that would be relatively easy to put in place, a review after 12 months?
Thanks, Councillor Yuri, it would be a similar process to the review that we've undertaken to date and presented to you this evening. So we would be looking, I'd imagine, we would similarly do a similar review and present that to councillors either after 2 years as set out in the officer's recommendation, or at some other time if that's amended through the resolution of council.
Mayor, may I present a brief rationale as to why
No, thank you, Councillor Buckley. We're just in the process of establishing whether your amendment will or will not be accepted. Right. At this point, it is up to the mover of the original motion, which is Councillor Reeves.
No, I'm not comfortable with it, not for any particular reason other than a transactional reason. I'm happy to explain that to councillors if they would like to hear it. We haven't had this discussed. In 12 months' time, there'll be a new council, and I think there's an opportunity for the new council to actually not have to make a decision on something they know nothing about, and they're much better off having a policy in place that they can see and then review it 12 months into their next term. I think that this is a much more sensible way of progressing this, as it is.
Okay, so my understanding is that the governance rules state that if the mover of the original motion doesn't support the amendment is lost, and we go back to hearing either questions of clarification on the original motion or speakers for and against the original motion.
Yes, I think we're up to the mover speaking for the motion.
Certainly. Okay. Councillor Reeves, would you like to speak for the motion?
And look, I think there was merit in putting forward having it reviewed earlier, but for the simple reason that in 12 months' time there'll be a new council, and I think the new council doesn't want to be burdened by having to make a decision on something they're not familiar with at this particular stage. Look, I share, councillors, some of the concerns about recommendation 11 from the Sandon report. So I'm no friend of that particular recommendation at all. I think that it's an ill-considered recommendation, but that's not what we're deciding at the moment. I think it's great that the officers have actually included that reference to the Sandon report in this particular document as a way of explaining why this particular delegation's report actually can continue to work for us, and hopefully it does for the next couple of years. So I hope you support it, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Councillor Yuri, would you like to speak to the motion?
Only very briefly. I think what we're striving to achieve is policy and a system with our planning applications that is efficient, but it's also fair to all parties. And I'm happy that this revised policy is a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Yuri. Is the motion opposed? Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Buckley.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I think it's a serious misadventure not to put a 12-month review on this policy because of the Sanderson report. So I can't support it because of that. I think it's a grave injustice to the next council group that they won't have the opportunity to review it at an earlier stage, or perhaps they'll put a motion forward to do so. And also, I think that it's also negating councillors' ability to represent their community by taking away their powers to make decisions, and that's what the democratic role is. So I won't be supporting this motion because of those reasons. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? I see no hands. In that case, as the mover of the motion, Councillor Reeves, I'll give you right of reply.
Look, thanks for that. Councillors, as you've heard from the officers, the opportunity to call in planning matters hasn't changed. It works successfully. This particular council came together with, I think, a particular focus and imprimatur from the community to do something about planning, whatever it was, to speed things up. That was a real cri de coeur from the community, that planning was a constipation for many members of the community. And I think that, to all credit to the officers and this council, that blockage has been removed, and this is another way of continuing that. Sorry for the metaphors, that might be a bit too medical for many, but it is something that we can all relate to. And in terms of business continuity, faith and confidence in our community, people being able to progress their dream homes, whatever they happen to be, I think that to speed up the planning process, but still have the checks and balances that are in place through this delegations policy, I think is a good move. I have no concerns about it, and I don't think anybody here should either. Vote for it, councillors.
I'll now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors.
Yeah, I'll call for a division, thank you.
Just in time, Councillor Buckley. Yes, you can. Councillors, I'll take you back to the vote now. All those in favour? Councillor Reeves, Councillor Uri, Councillor Crook, Councillor Greason, Councillor Stowe, Councillor Allen, Councillor Van Diggle. All those against? Councillor Buckley, Councillor White. Thank you, councillors. The next report is item 5.3.1. No, it's not. The next report item is 5.3.2, East Gippsland Winter Festival Sponsorship Proposal. Mr McConnell, General Manager for Place and Community, could you please present your report?
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. Before you is a report seeking your approval of sponsorship proposal for the East Gippsland Winter Festival. Council has a commitment to fostering signature events in our region, and particularly events that support the visitor economy. In response to what's an increasingly competitive environment for visitor attraction and visitor events, Council developed the East Gippsland Events Growth Action Plan for 2021 to 2026, and that was adopted late in 2021. And the plan focuses on strengthening existing events and maximising the value of Council's investment, and in particular, seeking to really support homegrown events that are of the place, that are of East Gippsland. The East Gippsland Winter Festival is just that. It's grown over a number of years and has been demonstrated success with attracting visitors in the off-peak season in the winter for East Gippsland, and also ensuring that events are held right across East Gippsland. It's the only festival of its kind that we have that is really broadly based and encompasses almost every part of East Gippsland, and so it's certainly to be celebrated in that respect. The East Gippsland Winter Festival has been considered as part of the Pathways to Growth funding program, which forms part of the action plan that I referred to earlier. To date, it hasn't been eligible because it was had some funding already allocated out of the previous RAIDS program, but also now the program, the Winter Festival has really grown beyond the scale of the design of that Pathways to Growth program, and is now established. We have the request from the Winter Festival for support. Our view is that there is a significant opportunity to really embed and grow this event and make sure it's sustainable into the future. And so before you is a recommendation in relation to that sponsorship proposal, where we propose that we enter into a sponsorship arrangement of $50,000 per year for 3 years. And I note the recommendation is also that $30,000 per year of that $50,000 is drawn from the Economic Development Discretionary Fund. So, councillors, the report's before you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr McConnell. Councillors, are there any questions of clarification? Councillor Uri.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a clarification, there's a little sort of a typo down there on the bottom, second bottom line on page 98, which says $30 a year, but I think it's 30,000. It should
Correct.
be 30,000. Okay.
Correct, Councillor Uri.
Just a question, is there any expectation for this event to become self-sustaining at any point? And if so, what are the measures that we would be expecting them to take? Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Uri. Certainly, our expectation and hope is that increasingly that is the case. I suspect a level of support will be required for some time, but increasingly the funding that's provided should provide the opportunity for the festival to develop the capacity to raise funds through other forms. What's really important about this arrangement is that it provides then also a basis to leverage other funding support over this period of time. But the intention is that it will become much closer to being self-funded. But I think also with an event of this scale and the way in which it's operated to date and the potential for further growth, it's something that I'd anticipate the council would want to support into the future in any case. Not necessarily at the same levels, but certainly it's an event that we would want to see continue and levels of support provided.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any further questions? Councillor Van Diggel?
Does supporting something like this set a precedent for us to support other events in the community that are ongoing? I understand that this is, being quite big. It's in every community rather than just Bairnsdale or Paynesville. But, I'm just thinking about a recent one that council did fund, which is very exciting, was the mountain bike competition. Do you think that it sets an expectation that other people will expect something like this as well?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Van Diggel. And I think some of the points that you go to have been in our minds as we've been formulating this recommendation. So we have programs that focus on the funding of specific events. So we have the Pathways to Growth program, and we've been seeking further expressions of interest for people to participate in that. So for individual events to continue to grow and be successful over multiple years. We also have, and as you're aware, we've been reviewing the Community Grants program, but the Community Grants program provides an avenue for then support of those smaller community scale events and the opportunities that come from those. So we have other programs. This is the only event of its kind that really is whole of East Gippsland, and I think for that reason we've sought to bring it outside of those existing funding programs because we think that warrants a level of investment for that. But also, to be fair, bringing it forward in a transparent manner for consideration by councillors, given that it is, in that sense, stepping outside the existing program of, say, the Pathways to Growth program or similar. So I think the points you raise about the scale and the coverage of this event are the things that set it apart from others.
Yeah, that's great. And then I guess a follow-up question, and you may have told us recently, but when can we expect to see the community grants? I know we're doing a review. When will we sort of see that in front of us? And when can we expect that community grants might be open again? Yeah,
so I'd certainly expect to have community grants open again in the new year.
Great.
So we're expecting to see, I don't know, we haven't worked through exactly when in the new year, but we're certainly, the final report of that review is a matter of weeks away.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any further questions? In which case we do have an officer recommendation in the report. Councillor Buckley, is that a moving of the motion or is that a... It is. Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Kirsten Van Diggel? Kirsten, were you seconding the motion then?
Sure.
Thank you, Kirsten. Sonia, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, absolutely. I've had the pleasure of meeting some of the leaders of the East Gippsland Winter Festival. They are very professional, and I think that we should fully support this motion. I think winter can be quite a difficult time for many in the community, and this Winter Festival has provided the opportunity to bring together community, and especially after recovering from bushfires and COVID, I think it really did shine a light in the darkness of that time. So I fully support this, and I also acknowledge that they are looking at social enterprise models so that they can be self-sufficient and self-funding. And getting to that point, I have no hesitation to recommend this motion. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Councillor Van Diegle, would you like to speak to the motion?
Sure. I didn't have many points. I was sort of just copying you, Sonia, but I'm happy to speak to it. I was actually in Traralgon a few years ago when it had first started. I was working and someone said to me, I'm going to East Gippsland this weekend because I'm going to the Winter Festival, and asked questions like, oh, you're staying the night? Yes, I'm staying in Meetung. I thought, how awesome is that we have now, you know, got something that brings tourism in the colder months when we generally won't have many tourists. So I get really excited. The events are amazing. They're in every town. My workplace was making lanterns with people in Bendock and Tubbett and those sort of places, you know, so this event is not just in Bairnsdale and in Lakes Entrance, it's everywhere. I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing that someone has an idea in East Gippsland, and the council is now nurturing that and taking interest in making sure it's sustainable. So I'm very excited.
Thank you, Councillor Van Diegle. Is the motion opposed? Councillors, would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Stowe.
Yes, I'm for the motion. I'd just like to make the observation that $30,000 of the $50,000 proposed is in fact funded by the business people of of East Gippsland through the Eco-Dev levy that's put on the rates. So you could say that $30,000 of it is self-funded anyway.
Thank you, Councillor Stowe. Councillor Greason.
I think it's a fantastic festival for all the reasons people have said, and General Manager, Place and Community have outlined the reasons why very, very clearly. I think the volunteers who make this happen deserve our congratulations and our thanks and our ongoing support. And I would really like to be able to give them far more than we are, but I certainly support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Greason. Councillor Reeves.
It really is a great festival, and I've had the joy of attending the openings and closings and many of the events over the last couple of years, and getting to know the chief characters and proponents and the committee, and I really congratulate them. There's always a risk, councillors, of spending public money on private events, and I think that that socialisation of funding is something we always need to be mindful of, and I think the officers have really done a great job in actually demonstrating the social benefits. We've talked about the volunteers who are involved, and it isn't just a privatised event. I think that's what's really different. And Councillor Van Diegle, you were talking about that, about setting precedents, and I think it's really important that we understand that that we scrutinise those applications really carefully, so that there is a social benefit for socialised support like this, and I'm really happy to acknowledge that in this particular case, because it does have far-reaching benefits across our community. And especially when we see those young people getting out there in those lantern parades, and they can participate in the activities of the Winter Festival and be home in bed at 7:30 because it's the middle of winter and it's dark. So it's even better. We hear that from the parents. So nice job, everyone.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. Would anybody else like to speak for or against the motion? Councillor Allen.
Well, I'll endorse Mark's comment about being home in bed up 7. It's not only the young people, so we appreciate that. But of all the things that I know of that happen around the Shire, I don't know of anything that goes even close to involving so many people. The preparations take weeks and weeks and weeks. Over the time of the events, which is through a month, there's people setting up even the lantern trails, you know, someone's got to do it. And people come out of the woodwork to do it. And at a time when other community associations and organisations struggle to get people on the ground to give support, there doesn't seem to be that issue with this event. People really support it. And I think it's great.
Thank you, Councillor. Alan, anybody else like to speak for the motion? In that case, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to agenda item number 6, urgent business. CEO, I believe there is no urgent business for tonight's meeting.
Correct, Mayor.
Thank you. Agenda item number 7, confidential business. CEO, I believe there is no confidential business for tonight's meeting.
Correct, none tonight, Mayor.
Thank you, CEO. Well, councillors, that is it for this evening. Thank you. That concludes the proceedings for tonight's meeting. Thank you, everybody in the public gallery, and to those watching online. I'll now declare this meeting closed at 8:15. Thank you, everyone.